Okay, this morning we've got Rachit Moti from Go One with us, and I can't wait to dive deeper into the conversation about the future of learning and the future of work, obviously. But before we dive into Rachit, I want to know, who are you, what are you doing, and how did you get to where you are now?
Sure. Morning, Petra. Thanks for having me on board. Yeah, look, as you mentioned, my name is Rachit Moti. I work with Go One on our international sales and operations around the world. I think to answer that question of how did I get to what I'm doing now, I've been working within technology startups for probably about 5 years now. I'm always driven by businesses that use technology to bring about change, which is hopefully something that's meaningfully positive within society. Having been around the startup and the technology scene in Brisbane and Australia, I was introduced to the Go One founders, and I knew straight away that they were working on something that was not only a really big challenge in a market that made a lot of sense, but there was an incredibly smart team behind it all, and they were all working on changing this landscape of learning, which will influence the way we live and work over time, and I think for the better. And I think over the last few years, we've grown from strength to strength with about 1.5 million users, 250 staff, and I think we've got a really great team that is all valuing the same thing, and it's been really great to be part of that. And hopefully we see more and more companies in the ecosystem around us bring more of this kind of innovation and positive change about as well.
For sure. And can you talk a little bit more about what is Go One and what are the changes, especially in the education space, that you've seen over the last 12 months or so?
Yeah, for sure. So Go One is the world's largest aggregator for online workplace training. What that means is we bring together thousands of courses from a range of providers into one simple solution. So I think many people are used to using something like a Netflix or a Spotify, where they get access to a range of content for one simple subscription. Go One does that for workplace learning. And I think in terms of, sorry about that, I think the second part of that question was the top three changes or innovations that we've seen in that learning industry. I think overall, the biggest thing I think is actually the way learning itself is changing, and the way that the fact that the industry itself is growing. I think that e-learning industry is growing faster than ever before, and we're seeing a shift towards a culture of learning within places not only where we work, but also within our personal lives. I think technology enables us to understand new topics in ways that we previously weren't able to, or we didn't have that access. And so to see what people are working on and how they're changing kind of skill sets and moving between interests is something that I think there's a real positive impact stemming from. I think the follow-on to that, I guess, is companies are changing how they view training and learning more and more as well. I think that means not only better skilled and qualified workers, but it also engages staff more. They're part of professional development pathways with their teams, and of course developing skill sets which leads to a workforce that can adapt over time. I think we're seeing more and more value on this training, but I think what follows on from that is that the companies are saying, well, okay, we've got this culture of learning that we want to embrace. How do we optimize for this? How do we embrace new technologies to make this easier, that works with our workers, with the people around us? Is it on demand? Is it accessible? Does it give them diversity of learning options? Is it, it probably will work out significantly cheaper, but in the end, it will work out to have a better outcome for the business, for the people involved, for the community around them. So I think that plus the culture of learning are two things, and I think the third thing that stems from that is just I think we're no longer excited by a plain text document or or a PowerPoint or a boring seminar. I think the way learning is changing, it's growing. There's more focus on it. That's leading to innovation within learning. People are actually taking it seriously, spending time to create good content, something that resonates with people, where, we're looking at interactive delivery, and that can be from, in our personal lives, the way people are learning new languages with something like Duolingo on their smartphone, through to, on-site inductions for fire and safety being done with virtual reality and augmented reality. So there's a lot happening in that space, and I think, it's hard to answer, because this whole learning space has just grown so much and has started to change so much over the last few years, that I think that whole culture of learning and the value of learning feeds into a lot of innovations within itself.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And when you say the changes in learning, what do these changes bring when it comes to the skill sets, but also the jobs and the workplaces as such?
Yeah, sure. I think, there's a number of things to that. Obviously, roles are changing over time. I think skill sets are becoming more and more adaptable and fluid as new technologies emerge. If you think of, say, like a IT or a technology firm, those people within those companies need to be able to work with new technologies. And how do you get people to learn new ways of working that are potentially just new technologies, but they may be better project management methodologies. And there's this continuous innovation and continuous learning that's stemming from having access to so much content out there in terms of the learning space. And I think that allows people to just continually redevelop and upskill and make sure that they're doing what they want to do and doing it in the best way possible.
Mm-hmm. And if companies haven't jumped onto the bandwagon yet with this learning culture and learning environment, what would be the best way to get started to embrace the changes and to upskill or reskill the workforce with them?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think a defined learning strategy is probably something that companies need to start looking at. Now, there's a number of kind of articles and influences and kind of authorities to look at. But I think even looking at the community around them is there's this space there that you can reach out, and learning is a concept that we've found in the community most people are pretty open about. They're happy to talk about how are we developing our people, where are we going towards, what can we do along the way. So I think the first step is just understanding what's out there, because it is a big field or a big space, and then from there it's about talking with the team. What do you want? What do you want to learn? Where do we see the company going? How can we get to the best possible place? If the company in itself feels one thing and the learners, also feel that, then there's probably a good business case to say, well, how do we get the skill set that people are wanting, we think can help our business, and kind of, deliver that to them. And then obviously tying back to the delivery method, I think, looking at modern technologies that are on demand, accessible. E-learning is certainly something that is rising at a phenomenal rate. And I think that just ties into the fact that it gives people power to learn new skills when they want, and also the right ones. Some things can be, defined projects that they'll work on for 6 months and learn a new skill, and sometimes there's just as much value in just-in-time training. So going to a meeting and being able to understand, how do I set up a meeting agenda, or how do I do this one task? And I think there's such a diversity in the learning that's available, that I think being able to provide diversity is important. Otherwise, you'll be limiting yourself from what you think is the best kind of outcome. But there's probably a lot of other things that can be very, very valuable to the business as a whole.
Definitely. And can you talk more about the changes and the innovation in the actual learning space, from being very traditional in a classroom where we had a teacher and a book and listening to what they were saying, to where we are now? What's been the major shifts and changes, and also where do you see it moving further from now on?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think it's an area that I'm really passionate about, and in seeing what that might end up being. I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's pretty clear that we're no longer as excited by plain text or a boring seminar. And I think a lot of those training delivery methods stem from the fact that training and learning used to be something that was done because you had to, because it was compliance driven, or there was a legal requirement, or we were just ticking boxes. But now we've come to this culture of learning and continuous learning and continuous development of people, that these new methods of interactive delivery are coming through. And I think there's a wide range there. I think, that is e-learning like Go On, where you've got access to tens of thousands of courses, similar to like a Spotify or Netflix, through to, bespoke kind of AR, VR delivery, where people are learning how to extinguish a fire without actually having to, set up an actual fire. They can now do that in the safety and the confines of a headset, which obviously is much safer, much cheaper. It's easier to facilitate. So I think it's there's a number of changes happening there, and I think they're all for the better. In terms of where I think it will actually end up going, I think it'll be a hybrid. It's really hard to tell in terms of exactly what will stand out, but I think what the common theme is, giving people the diversity and the ability to actually find what they need is important, because people are generally best at knowing what they'll need for their skill set. People, we're seeing even in their personal lives with the rise of consumer apps like Duolingo and those, there is a desire, there is a want for people to develop themselves, and I think being able to give them something like that, they will enable them to develop their own skill sets. So it's hard to tell exactly where what technology will shine through, but I think there's use cases for all of them. As I said, that AR side of things, very useful for that kind of application. But at the same time, the delivery of communication training or something else is probably easier to just roll out with e-learning or interactive videos or modules like that.
Mm-hmm. And from your experience, from the case studies overall, have you seen a common theme or trend for some delivery methods over the other? For example, gamification works better, or a virtual reality experience has the biggest impact. How do we learn best on average?
Yeah, so look, everyone kind of learns differently, but I think what's important and what we've seen is the concept of blended learning. So there's not a clear cut, only do this, only do e-learning, or only do face-to-face. I think there are parts of each which are irreplaceable. I think if you think about, say, the process of inducting someone into a company, it's so valuable and so irreplaceable to actually be there in person and hear about the culture and meet those people that you'll be working with. That's not something that e-learning is, really designed to replace, because that's inherent to the business. That's important and integral. But I think when you look at something like that, or any skill that might be taught in a workshop or a seminar, being able to then follow that up and people resources that reinforces learning with e-learning is an example of a way of blending that. You might have a workshop around communication or management skills, and that's great, but if people forget that straight away or don't know how to refresh or implement that within their own lives or their day-to-day, then it's a little bit of a waste. And if you can bring together a range of technologies and a range of delivery methods, then you've got this really good outcome of being able to give people the knowledge that they're looking for and that you want to impart on them, but you're giving it to them in the ways that suit them best. And so I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all, apart from the fact that blended learning allows people to really take advantage of that in the best way that will work for them. Some people prefer face-to-face only, and some people will prefer e-learning only, and there's a myriad of different kind of options in between, but I think providing that is probably the key to solving that.
Yes. Okay. And what advice would you give companies who want to future-proof themselves and start with flexible learning environments and delivery methods, but they've got a very diverse workforce, maybe even a global workforce? What would be a first step to tap your toes into the water and see what's out there?
Yeah, for sure. Like at Go One, we've certainly seen a number of companies that haven't previously had a big allocation of resources towards learning, and it's about building that business case and how do we test this to understand what the effects are. So I think if you look at the range of learning delivery that's out there, face-to-face generally cost the most, alongside bespoke online solutions that are created for you. So I think there's this it's quite an easy way of taking what's available right now, kind of existing courses. Something like a Go One allows for diversity of content, tens of thousands of courses. We see a lot of people using our content there to understand, well, if we give this to all of our staff, are they using it? How are they using it? What topics are they interested in? And then from there, you're able to influence your learning strategy, because you've got thousands of topics there, and you might see, look, everyone's actually really interested in management and leadership. And then from there, you can start running management and leadership workshops and kind of building on that, rather than being prescriptive. If you give people the ability to develop and learn what they want in line with kind of what you're looking to do, then you're able to influence, or see what might be the best path forward, and slowly ramp that up. You'll see the value of that e-learning. Then you might say, look, well, what happens if we develop our own bespoke e-learning that's designed entirely to our brand and exactly to what we do? Then what if we do workshops? Then what if we build kind of bespoke VR, AR, or, whatever that might be. It's such a wide range of things that you could do, but I think there are easy ways to step in with something like an e-learning, because it's on demand, it's accessible, it provides diversity of content, and then you can kind of step through to the end goal of whatever that might be.
I think there are plenty and endless opportunities, and we probably haven't even scratched the surface to see what's out there and how can we speed up the learning curve and constantly challenge ourselves to jump from one learning curve to the next. So I'm really excited to see what's next for you guys and for the learning industry as such. And to wrap up the conversation, I would love to know, what are you personally most excited about those changes, about the opportunity that it will bring personally, but also professionally?
Okay, cool. I think the exciting thing is not only the technology, but I think how that will affect how people live and work, and also how it affects the people themselves. So I think I'm very interested to see how learning changes and how people's skill sets change and adapt, and what that means for the work we do. I personally think over time, if people can develop these super kind of unique skill sets rather than having to follow that standard formalized training as before, then we're going to see a lot of creativity emerge. We're going to see people work in roles that are really passionate about the areas that they work in, and these might be even areas that they've created themselves, jobs they've created themselves out of something that didn't exist before. And so I think it's a little bit vague, because there's all this change, and we will see how skill sets adapt, how people adapt, what learning means, what work means. And so I think, to me personally, I love that ambiguity. I love that it's something that will happen, that we have an idea of what might happen. But I think if you enable people to do whatever they need or however they might want to learn, they'll probably self-serve and figure out what gets them going. And I think there's a great thing there that can emerge from all of that. It's a little bit like an indoor dark roller coaster. You have an idea of what might be coming up. It's all very exciting, but you don't know exactly what it's going to be. It's all exciting, but you just kind of go into it and you'll find out. And I think that really gets me excited. So I think it's a very broad thing for me, but I'm just super excited to see how people live and work in the future through the changes to kind of this learning culture and this continuous learning that we've got coming through right now.
I think we're definitely in the most exciting time to actually create our own jobs and our own careers based on what we are personally good at, not necessarily just what's already out there, because we don't know if that might be replaced or not relevant anymore. So this is what I'm working with companies a fair bit to disrupt their own careers, and from an employee's point of view, how can you jump to the next learning curve, make yourself redundant and improve yourself from the contribution, but also from what you can actually bring to the role, rather than waiting for the line manager to say, this is your next step, because that's not relevant anymore. So very, very exciting to see what's next for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Where can everyone find more about Go One and about yourself?
No, look, sorry for cutting you off there. If you want to find more about Go One, it's just go1.com. That's GO1. .com. Or you can reach out to me at my LinkedIn, that's just Rachit Moti, or you can probably get in touch through go1.com as well. So always happy to field any questions around kind of the future of work, future of learning, and how we're changing things, or if anyone wants to just talk about e-learning and what we're doing at Go1, I'd be happy to connect. So feel free to get in touch.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Petra.
Thank you.